Hello, everybody. Charles from GMAT Ninja here. Welcome to episode 5 of our 2026 Critical Reasoning series, Everything Live. So if you see me say silly things, it'll be on the internet forever. It'll be amazing. Okay, so today we're talking about 3 different kinds of questions: evaluate the argument, find the flaw, and evaluate the people arguing. So those are the questions where you have a little conversation going on. One person says one thing, somebody else says another. What's going on? So those are 3 question types that all feel a little bit different from each other. Part of why I wanted to combine them into a single video here. One reason is if we try to do single videos on every single little critical reasoning question type, this series will be 40 videos long. You don't want that. The other reason is I think they all have something in common. So if you've watched the rest of the series or watched any of our videos on the GMAT Ninja channel, live videos and older series here on GMAT Club, you hear me talk over and over about the fact that the key to critical reasoning, being really great at it, is a consistent, repeatable process. So always thinking in terms of the argumentative structure and then asking yourself over and over, their words are mine, their words are mine, their words are mine. So in a really basic question, so imagine a strengthen or weaken question, you're always doing the same thing, right? You're getting the conclusion, the author's conclusion in their words. If it's your words and not theirs, you get into trouble. Paraphrasing can kill you on critical reasoning. Reading comps different. It can kill you on critical reasoning. And then make sure you understand the support. So for example, a really basic passage might have a conclusion, 2 elements of support. And then this is your answer choice, right? So on a weakened question, it's okay, you're inserting an answer choice. The one that weakens this conclusion is your winner. Strengthener, same idea. The one that strengthens is your winner. Assumption, well, yeah, it's going to be the assumption you add here that's going to reinforce your conclusion. We talked about those in previous episodes. Now, with all 3 of these question types, so flaw, evaluate the argument, and sort of these 2 people arguing questions, certainly the first 2, it's almost like there's a but in here. So this is still your answer choice, but it doesn't necessarily cleanly weaken or cleanly strengthen. It's more subtle than that. You could think of this for the evaluate and the flaw questions as it's kind of like a but. You add the answer choice in and it's like, well, here's the conclusion, here's the support is given, but here's this other thing you need to think about. Now, on the ones where you have 2 people arguing, you're just going to basically follow the structure every time and just make sure you're really clear about each person in that argument, each of their logical structures. Do we have a conclusion and some support? What exactly do we have there? And most of the time, it's going to follow something like this, maybe a little bit stripped down, maybe not a lot of support, maybe just something that isn't a clear conclusion. But you want every single time, you want to make sure you're thinking structurally, doing everything you can to make sure you spot this structure and asking yourself, their words or mine. Now, again, nothing really special logically. All 3 of these question types can feel a little bit more awkward, but it's the same kind of things we've been doing, just applied a little bit differently. And where do errors come from? It's in missing some little detail somewhere. It's their words or yours. And some of the questions here, I didn't necessarily select for this. I selected questions of decent difficulty, 650-ish level, 700-ish level, something like that. Typically about a third of people miss all the questions I've chosen. But usually it's because they're misreading or misinterpreting something. It's not usually the structure, but having good structure can help you be more attuned to those little details that mean everything. Okay, with that, I'm going to shut my trap for a moment. Go and take a look at this first question, and we'll give you a couple minutes, and I'll remove that logo in just a moment. There you go. Live group, as always, you know the drill. Let me know what you're thinking. If you're lost, please let me know. Our live viewers, as always, keep your answers coming, even as I talk. I'm curious to see what you guys come up with. Seeing some disagreement. That's great. Okay. Argument here. I do my best to get it on the board just so you don't have to sit there and watch me writing this crap for a while. So pretty clear conclusion here, right? It's really just saying, hey, the residents of Meadowbrook are more likely to be victims of violent crime than are residents of Parkdale. Why is that? Really just citing the stats here. So the violent crime rate in Meadowbrook went up 60% over 4 years. And in Parkdale, the corresponding figure was 10%. So Parkdale, violent crime up only 10%. Meadowbrook, violent crime up 60%. Okay, great. The crime rate is increasing faster in Meadowbrook than in Parkdale. And again, we're looking for the logical flaw, which means, again, we're just going to kind of stick a little button here. We're talking about sticking butts in places. Great. That's classy. All right. So what is that but? Now, again, you've heard me say this in other episodes. I don't necessarily advocate trying to anticipate what that is. You just want to make sure you're really clean and understand what the argument is. Pay attention to those little nuances of language. And a lot of people reading this kind of go, okay, violent crime rate. Let's make sure we're clear about what that means. You've got that little parenthetical there. So what does that mean? Well, that's violent crimes per 1,000 residents. Okay, great. That's useful. Anything else here? I think that's kind of it, right? So it's making the overall claim that the residents are more likely to be victims of violent crime. And then we have this increase in crime rates over a 4-year period as a support for it. Okay, neat. All right. Seeing all kinds of disagreement. I think we have from the live group, this is awesome. I think we have literally every single answer chosen by somebody, which makes me happy. So, all right. Argument above is flawed because it fails to take into account. And whatever it is going to be the strongest of the buts here. It's going to be the thing where you go, well, wait a minute. If that's the case, it could blow up this argument. It's not necessarily a weakener exactly, but that's the idea, right? Is something that if once we think about it, we go, oh, wait a minute. That might cast doubt on this. That might blow up the conclusion. Okay, so A, changes in the population density of both cities over the past 4 years. Okay, think about what population density means. Population density means the number of people per square kilometer, per square mile. So population density is not going to have anything to do with this for 2 reasons. Number one, we don't necessarily care about how many people are crammed onto a certain tract of land. That has nothing to do with crime rates. Number two, right here, per 1,000 residents. And I just realized it's spilling off the screen a little bit. So per 1,000 residents, it's already baked in, right? So population increases, changes to population or changes to population density. We've already kind of controlled for that in these stats, right? So if the population went up, let's say in Meadowbrook over these 4 years, the amount of crimes went up not just by 60%, but by more than 60%, right? Because this is crime rate per 1,000 residents. Increasing populations or increasing population density isn't going to change any of this because the stats already take that into account. So for that reason, again, density, we don't care about the density per acre of land. That doesn't matter. But population doesn't really matter either because it's already baked into the way these statistics are presented and calculated. So A is out. B, how the rate of population growth compares to the corresponding rate for Parkdale. That sounds great too. But again, this is the key. Per 1,000 residents, crime rate, it already takes that into account. So any number of things are possible here. I suppose in Meadowbrook, you could have the same number of crimes, but lower population. I mean, that's possible. Or you could have a stable population increasing crime. You could have an increasing population, rapidly increasing crime. Any of those things are possible, but it's irrelevant to the argument. B is irrelevant to the argument. It's not going to change how we see any of it because it's already baked in. The conclusion is residents are more likely to be victims of a crime, meaning, well, yeah, it's for any given resident, how common is crime? What's the probability of being the victim of a violent crime? And the rate already accounts for any changes in population. So that's why B is out. Okay, C, the ratio of violent to nonviolent crimes committed during the past 4 years in Meadowbrook and Parkdale. Don't care because everything here, again, this is where paying attention to those little nuances of language, we do see a fair number of people picking C. Not so much in the live group, which is good. I've seen a couple of them, but we see quite a bit of it elsewhere when we've taught this question or on GMAT Club or whatever. It doesn't matter here because every bit of language here, victims of violent crime, the violent crime rate. Now, not uncommon for GMAT questions to kind of eliminate the word violent from the conclusion and then C is very relevant. Here though, airtight. Everything is about violent crime. It doesn't really matter how many nonviolent crimes there are because of the way this is written to be entirely about violent crimes. C is out. I really hope we like D or E. D, violent crime rates in Meadowbrook and Parkdale 4 years ago. Okay, wait a minute. Let's think about that. Is that a useful but to have? Well, okay, Meadowbrook, it went up 60%. But what if the crime rates were really, really low in Meadowbrook? What if it started at, I don't know, 1 violent crime per 1,000 residents and it went up to 1.6? Okay, maybe not a big deal. What if Parkdale was already at 10 violent crimes per 1,000 residents? Then that 10% increase is over a much bigger base. So do we care about the violent crime rates 4 years ago? Yeah, if we're concluding that you're more likely to be a victim of crime in Meadowbrook now than in Parkdale, then it has to be that then you have to think about what were the crime rates before. Just because there was an increase doesn't mean there's necessarily more crime here than here. Might have increased faster from a lower baseline in Meadowbrook and increased less from a higher baseline in Parkdale. Totally possible. So D absolutely identifies a flaw in the argument. We should be taking into account those initial crime rates 4 years ago. All right, what about E? How Meadowbrook's expenditures for crime prevention compared to Parkdale's expenditures has nothing to do with it, right? If there's more crime, there's more crime. It doesn't matter how much you're spending on it necessarily. If there's more crime per capita, if the crime rates are higher, you're more likely to be a victim of crime regardless of what the city is trying to do about it. So those expenditures don't mean anything here. E is out. D is our winner. All right. Wow. Okay. See, still, yeah, I'm kind of scrolling back through what the live group said, getting tons of disagreement. This is really interesting. And really kind of useful to see that these are struggle for you guys. I'm glad we're doing these. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my best to get through as many questions as we can. So I've got several each for flaws, evaluate the argument, which is a very close cousin to the flaw question, same basic structure. And then I've got a couple of the two people arguing questions. Live group, as we go through these, I'll do one of each first. So I'll do an evaluate the argument question next. Then we'll do a little conversation kind of question. As we go through those, if there's a particular one that you feel like you're struggling on more structurally, if I'm seeing agreement on the live group, I'll do make a point of doing extras of those. I don't think I'm going to get through more than 4 or 5 in this video, but I'll do my best. Okay. With that, guys, here's another one. Here's your evaluate the argument. Same sort of structure, same sorts of ways to make a mistake, right? It's missing some of those nuances of language. It's not really thinking deeply enough sometimes about what exactly is going to influence that conclusion. Same exact idea, just slightly different question phrasing. That's it. All right. Go ahead and take a moment here. Why is this not advancing? There we go. All right, pause if you need to, as always. Yeah, seeing disagreement again in the live group. To be fair, this one's a tough one. Closer to half of people miss it. So if you're struggling, no shame in it at all. But it's also interesting to me to kind of see why. Like, I can kind of see in the answer choices you guys are picking. Same thing as far as what I see online. Hello, Kanza. So I see kind of the same sorts of errors repeated over and over. Almost always it has something to do with missing the, I know I'm a broken record on this, missing the exact language somewhere. You're paraphrasing something and it's causing some of the trouble, at least for a good chunk of you. All right. And I'm seeing some of the observations. Some of you guys are picking up on it. Makes me happy. All right. What's our conclusion here? Okay, so we've got this this chain of gasoline stations. So the XT chain, they've got a temporary sales promotion in August. And if you purchase 10 or more gallons of gasoline, you get a free car wash. Neat. Well, what's the conclusion? The conclusion is that the promotion was successful as a means of boosting sales, not profits, sales, as a couple of you pointed out. What's the support for it? Well, it's just the data, right? So in August, the XT chain experienced a 10% increase in gasoline sales, not overall sales, gasoline sales, versus the previous August. And said, okay, now we're looking for the but here. So the correct answer choice is going to be something where we go, oh, wait a minute, but if we thought about that, it might change how we feel about the conclusion. So let's look at A here. In the areas where XT's gas stations operate, how did total combined gasoline sales for all gas stations last August compare with sales for previous August? Okay, a lot of people discard this because they go, the argument is entirely about the XT chain. I don't care about other gas stations. I want you to be really careful with that way of thinking. This is kind of, it's eye matching, it's word matching, it's being really dismissive about scope. So if you look at this and go, we don't care about other stations, I just want you to be really careful of that thought process. Instead, I also want you to say, right, well, how would this actually influence the conclusion? Let's think about it. Well, the whole argument, the conclusion isn't that sales went up. The conclusion is the promotion was successful at boosting sales. The sales increase was caused by the promotion. Well, when you think about A, well, what if everybody's sales were going up in the region? What if all of the gas stations had a 10% increase just because there were 10% more people driving around or something? Well, then that would change this, right? Then you would say, hey, the reason for the increase in sales wasn't the promotion. It wasn't the car washes. It was something else going on that was increasing sales. So even though A sounds like it's out of scope, I think you've got to consider it, right? Wouldn't it be useful to know if everybody was experiencing sales growth 10%? What if it's even more than that? So I'm going to hang on to A for that reason. And again, if that was something that you dismissed quickly, and I saw a couple of people in the live group just pick B or C right away, it tells me that what you were doing was you're looking at this and going, oh yeah, that's out of scope. I'm gonna eliminate that. So if you find that you're making that mistake quite a bit, we actually have some videos on our channel that deal specifically with those sorts of pitfalls, word matching, dismissing things too hastily as out of scope. So if that's a problem for you, take a look at some of those videos. All right. B, was the money that XT earned from the increase in gasoline sales enough to offset the cost of providing free car washes during the promotion? If you are thinking like a real life normal human being, you really care about B, right? Because if you're the XT chain, let's say that you're the CEO of the XT gasoline chain, sounds like a really exciting thing to do. You would really care about the cost of car washes. This argument does not. Don't let reality get in the way of your critical reasoning. What's the argument saying? The promotion was successful as a means of boosting sales. We don't care about profits. So don't think like a real world person. Think like a critical reasoning person on the GMAT. Narrow your mind. What is the conclusion? Sales, sales. B gets into costs, relevant to profits, irrelevant to sales. B is out. We don't care about it. C, were there any customers who bought 10 or more gallons? Any customers who bought 10 or more gallons at an XT gasoline station during the promotion who would have bought gasoline in the same station at lower quantities, but more frequently? In other words, are there people kind of gaming the promotion? They're not actually buying more gas. They're just kind of changing when they buy gas, how they buy gas so they can get the free car wash. That sounds important. If you're the gasoline chain, would you care about that behavior? In theory, very much so. You don't want to get gamed, right? You want the promotion to actually boost your sales. Here's the problem. You have a couple problems here. One is the sales are still up by 10%, right? So we're trying to figure out why that happened. The fact that there might have been a few customers, any customers, look at that language, right? Were there any customers who had this behavior where they got the free car wash but didn't actually buy more gas? It doesn't really matter if there were a few people doing that. What was the overall effect? The overall effect of something was that gas prices went up 10%. The argument is attributing that to the car wash promotion. just because there's a few people running around gaming the car wash promotion really has no bearing on any of this. It might have been the case that some people were kind of gaming it a little bit, but then there were other people who just started buying gas there just to get the free car wash, and it was what boosted sales. So C is irrelevant. We don't care about a few people gaming the system. We still have an increase in sales, regardless of what these handful of people might be doing in terms of changing their behavior. D, did XT or any of its gasoline stations have to pay other businesses to provide the car wash that the customers were offering the promotion? Very, very similar to B. Very relevant to profits. Real world, you care. GMAT, sales, this argument, I don't care. I don't care about the cost. I only care about whether that car wash promotion boosted sales. And E, are XT's gasoline sales in August usually significantly higher than 1/12 of XT's annual gasoline sales. Again, real world, maybe interesting to know if you're the CEO of a gasoline chain, but here it doesn't matter at all. We're just comparing August to the previous August. So E is out. Doesn't really matter if August has higher sales typically than other months. That's irrelevant. We're just comparing August to August here. So our answer is A. All right. Yep, everything we do here, these are real GMAT questions, come from the actual GMAT, fair game for the current version of the GMAT. For what it's worth, GMAT stopped using the term GMAT focus. It's been about 2 years now. So you might see it called GMAT focus kind of on the internet or whatever. GMAT itself does not use that term. There's only one version of the GMAT, and everything we do in these videos is very much relevant for them. Okay. And then, seeing all kinds of good stuff from you guys. Total sales of the year increase at 3 is true. I'm having a hard time understanding a couple of these. I apologize. Okay, struggling a little bit to follow some of these. I might circle back to them in a minute. But all right. And thank you so much for the kind words, you guys. Seeing a couple of these pop up. Always love it. Thank you for watching. If you have friends who are prepping, please invite them. Love having people here harassing me live, saying nice things, saying mean things. Rather we say mean things than not be here at all. All right. Question number 3. We're going to do one of the questions where 2 people are arguing. And again, I want you to think structurally. So where do errors come from? Not sexy. It's often missing those words. You're more likely to catch those little details if you're thinking structurally every step of the way. The annoying thing is when you have two different people speaking, it's like 2 little mini passages. So you have to think structurally twice. It's really the only difference. That's it. Okay, go ahead and tackle this one. And then depending on what you guys want to see, we'll either do extras of flaw, evaluate the argument, or of these conversation kind of things. Go ahead and take a moment. All right, as always, if you need a little more time, hit that pause button. Okay, so these feel like more work. They kind of are, but always be patient. If you try to shortcut that work of breaking down the logic, checking to make sure it's their words and not yours, that's where you get yourself into trouble. I'd rather see you spend, I don't know, 2 minutes and 15 seconds getting the question right, being systematic, than see you try to rush through it, save yourself 20 seconds, get it wrong. Sounds obvious, but when you see this, it's really easy to just kind of read without stopping to think about structure. That's where 60, 70, 80% of errors come from. Okay, so we've got this guy, Keith. His conclusion is that compliance with these regulations, so these regulations are going to harm the country's economy. Well, why is that? Well, compliance with the regulations is going to cost the entertainment industry $25 billion a year. So jobs are going to be lost, profits diminished, bad. Okay. And then we've got Laura comes along and says, okay, well, you always want to ask yourself is, does Laura have a conclusion here? I would argue not so much, right? Is Laura saying, no, the regulations are good? It's not clear to me that this adds up to a conclusion. I think what she's saying is, hey, okay, we've got sort of two things, I'd say both of which kind of attack, in a way, Keith's support. So Keith is saying, hey, look, the regulations are bad for the economy. Why? Compliance will cost $25 billion. As a result, jobs will be lost and profits will go down. And Laura's saying, yeah, that may be true that it costs $25 billion to the entertainment industry, but that $25 billion spent is revenue for others. And so there's actually going to be some jobs created, right? So jobs and profits will be gained, not just lost. So is she clearly saying that the regulations will not harm the economy? I don't know. You don't want to hallucinate conclusions either. I don't think she has one. I think she's just saying, okay, Keith, you've got your clear conclusion here and you've got your support for it. But hold on, these things that you're saying are going to happen won't have just the effects you say they're going to have. So yes, jobs might be lost and money's going to be spent in the entertainment industry. Profits will be diminished. But then somewhere else in the economy, jobs will be created and profits will increase. So I don't know, maybe it's not as bad as you say. Is she saying that the regulations won't harm the economy? I don't know. But she is saying, yeah, the reasoning here is a little bit weak and it has a consequence that you, Keith, are not quite thinking about. All right. Answer choice A. So Laura responds to Keith by doing what? And again, we talked about this in the boldface episode. Get used to this language. Sometimes it sounds a little bit legalese almost. It's not the way we talk in real life. You will get used to this over time if it's uncomfortable for you. If you really want an extra dose of this, try out some LSATs. You get much more of this sort of language, just amped up level of language in general. So if you find it uncomfortable, you can do that for extra practice. I think over the course of just prepping for the GMAT, you'll see enough of it in all likelihood. All right. So is she demonstrating that Keith's conclusion is based on evidence that is not relevant to the issue at hand? Not at all, right? Because she's saying it's definitely relevant, right? She's engaging in this whole idea of, well, hey, what is the effect of these regulations going to be? Will it increase jobs? Will it increase profits? Will it decrease them? So she's not saying that Keith's conclusion is based on irrelevant evidence. She's just interpreting that evidence differently. She's taking that evidence and saying, yeah, it has some consequences that you are not aware of or you're not thinking about in your argument, Keith. But she's not saying that the evidence is irrelevant at all. She's engaging directly in that very same evidence that Keith is. So A is out. B, challenging the plausibility of the evidence that serves as the basis for Keith's argument. Again, the evidence seems fine here, right? Is she disagreeing that that this will happen? Is she disagreeing about the $25 billion that will be spent by the entertainment industry? No. Is she disagreeing that jobs will be lost? No, she actually says jobs and profits will be gained as well as lost. She's acknowledging that everything he's saying is something that will happen. She's just saying, hey, Keith, you're forgetting that the other thing will happen too. Some jobs and profits will be gained. So she's not challenging the plausibility of the evidence. She's just saying, hey, dude, there's more to it. B's out. C, suggesting that Keith's argument overlooks a mitigating consequence. Yeah, that's exactly it, right? So she's saying Keith is overlooking the fact that there's other things that will happen. It will mitigate the overall effects of this regulation. Okay, hang on to C, that looks pretty good. D, reinforcing Keith's conclusion by supplying a complementary interpretation of the evidence Keith cites. That's a lot of words to say exactly the opposite of what she's doing. She's definitely not reinforcing his conclusion. She's weakening it. It's unclear whether she totally disagrees with it, but she's definitely not reinforcing it. Right there, you can get rid of D. Agreeing with the main conclusion of Keith's argument, but constructed that conclusion as grounds for optimism rather than pessimism. No, because if you're really dialed into exactly what Keith's conclusion is, these regulations will harm the economy. She's not saying that that's a reason for optimism. She's actually just casting doubt on that conclusion. Again, at least on the strength of it. So she isn't agreeing with the main conclusion, and she's certainly not casting that as grounds for optimism. E is out. C is our winner. Okay. Any general questions here? And yes, Dino, very much so. Baptized in a Greek church, altar boy for a long time. I do not speak Greek, unfortunately, but yes. Okay. If you like this, if you're enjoying this, please invite your friends because I love having people here live. If you want to see more, especially if on critical reasoning, so specifically on critical reasoning, if you're struggling with some of these things where it's like, hey, I'm having a hard time getting the conclusion exactly right. I'm eliminating answer choices that are right. I'm eliminating right away. I'm kind of dismissing things as out of scope or irrelevant. Our critical reasoning series kind of deals in pitfalls. That's the way we constructed that. Here we're talking about question types. Over in our free course, we engage more in here are the exact behaviors you tend to struggle with. You might enjoy those if you want to supplement to these videos. Also, just a free complete course for everything. Quant data insights, verbal. Check it out if you want more. All right. I'm not seeing any particular clamoring in the live group for any particular kind of question next. I'm going to go ahead and go with, I think, another evaluate the argument one, because I think that tends to be the one of these 4 question or 3 question types people struggle with the most. But again, live group, if there's something in particular you want to see, I've got a bunch of questions ready if you want a specific flavor. But we'll go ahead and hit another evaluate one next. And then we can do some flaw ones after that. Go ahead and take a moment. All right, as always, hit that pause button if you need to. Okay, so we've got a bunch of rhinos. They're in a park. They wear collars sometimes. Collar slips off. They got to put it back on. Every time you need to do something to a rhino, you got to shoot it with a tranquilizer dart. So what's our conclusion here? There's probably some substance in the tranquilizer that inhibits fertility. And what's the evidence for that? It's really just this idea that frequently recollared females have significantly lower fertility rates than uncollared females. So the females with collars, better fertility rates than the females that are frequently recollared. Well, what does that have to do with the tranquilizer darts? Well, it's because every time you recollar, it involves shooting the rhino with a tranquilizer dart. Okay, fair enough. That sounds pretty straightforward. And we're looking for the big but here. And again, I'm seeing it's kind of cool. Like I'm seeing a better result. This question is actually harder than one of the ones we did earlier. This is the gasoline one is a little bit harder statistically. This one is actually the second hardest one we've done. I'm actually seeing pretty good stuff from the live group. So I don't know if you're just kind of getting these a little bit better or what's going on, but it makes me happy if you're starting to struggle less. But again, sometimes when I see people struggle with this question type, it's more about just being too hasty with the answer choices than anything, kind of looking at something and dismissing it too quickly and saying, oh, that's irrelevant. And I wonder if you guys are starting to get that under control in the live group. And if so, that makes me happy. All right, let's take a look at these. Which one of these will provide kind of a but that makes you question all of this stuff, or kind of be the thing that, hey, if we understood that better, it might make us think differently about the conclusion. So most useful to determine which of the following: whether there are more collared female rhinoceroses than uncollared female rhinoceroses in the park. Doesn't really matter. I mean, I suppose you could go crazy with this and take it down the road of like a sample size issue. But the way this is phrased, whether there's more collared than uncollared, it doesn't really matter, right? As long as we're comparing properly between collared females, the ones specifically here that are frequently recollared, we're comparing frequently recollared versus females without a collar. Numbers don't really matter here, and it certainly doesn't matter whether there are more collared females than uncollared females. So A is out. B, the tranquilizer that is used for immobilizing rhinoceroses differs, if at all, from tranquilizers used in working with other large animals. This might be kind of tempting, and I don't blame you one bit if you hang on to this and go, well, it would be kind of nice to know, like, is there something weird about this particular tranquilizer? But where it's not all that relevant is, yeah, what if this tranquilizer, regardless of whether it is unique to rhinoceroses, whether it's different or the same for rhinos as it is for elephants or for 5-year-olds that need tranquilizing or whatever, it doesn't really matter. The question is whether this tranquilizer is having an effect on rhinoceroses and rhinoceros fertility. That's it. So it doesn't really matter if this is a different compound in some way than darts, than tranquilizers that are used elsewhere. So pretty irrelevant either way. If you wanted to be conservative and keep it in, I wouldn't blame you at all, because if you were the researcher looking at this, you'd go, well, is there something weird in there? Not necessarily a bad thing to know about, but is that something that's going to be really, really useful for determining whether these tranquilizer darts are affecting fertility in these rhinos? Not really, no. So I'm going to get rid of it, B. What about C? How often park rangers need to use tranquilizer darts to immobilize rhinoceroses for reasons other than attaching radio collars? This is one of those answer choices people eliminate because they go, well, we don't care about other reasons. It's all about collars. But think about it. Think about its effect. And again, this is advice that works for everything on critical reasoning, not just these evaluate the argument questions. Think about the effect. Think about what it does, not whether or not it appeared earlier. So what if so the evidence here is frequently recollared females versus uncollared females. Therefore, the darts used to shoot these frequently recollared females are causing the fertility issues. But wait a minute. Wouldn't it be useful to know if there are other reasons to tranquilize these animals? Because what if it's the case that, I don't know, they're using them for target practice and they're just tranquilizing rhinos regularly and they all get tranquilized all the time. In that case, the ones that are frequently recollared don't necessarily get a bigger dose of tranquilizers. What if it's the case that the ones that are not collared, because they don't have a collar, I don't know, they have to shoot them more often to study their feet? I don't know. But what if it's the case that collaring has nothing to do with frequency of tranquilizer ingestion, right? What if collaring and the amount of tranquilizers is decoupled in some ways? The argument assumes that they go together. Frequent recollaring, more tranquilizers. C, suggests that, wait a minute, we need to make sure that it's the case that recoloring isn't the only reason why these rhinos are getting tranquilized, and that recoloring really is a good proxy for how much tranquilizer they're getting into their system. So C is going to be very relevant, even though it kind of feels like it's out of scope. When you think about what it does, oh yeah, I do want to know whether or not the frequently recolored females are actually getting more tranquilizer into their system than other females or non-collared females. So we'll hang on to C. D, whether male rhinoceroses lose their collars any more often than park's female rhinoceroses. Doesn't matter. Unit of comparison here, we're only comparing frequently recolored females to uncollared females, and the fertility rates of those female rhinos. Doesn't really matter if the males are getting shot up more often. E, whether radio colors are the only practical means that rangers have for tracking the movements of rhinos in the park. Useful to know, right? But not for this exactly. That's something that in the real world, practically, you would want to understand, well, hey, do we have to color these guys at all? Wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to? But it doesn't affect this conclusion. The conclusion is that probably some substance in the tranquilizer inhibits fertility. To fix the problem, it would be nice to know E. To figure out whether the tranquilizer inhibits fertility, it doesn't really matter if we have another way of doing things. We need to know, hey, is there something about these females that need to be recolored frequently? They're getting a bigger dose of tranquilizer that's leading to infertility. That's what we're interested in knowing. Whether or not we could handle all this a different way doesn't help us shed light on that conclusion at all, even if it is useful in the real world. Again, don't let the real world get in the way of your GMAT. C is our only winner here. All right. Just checking through for comments. All right. Taha, you got it. Probably have time for one more question. I don't think I'm going to get to two. So yeah, let's tackle a flaw one next. Give me just a moment here. Think this gives you what you need. All right, dystopia. By the way, guys, this is a tough one, I think, and statistically, it's a tough one. So if you struggle a little bit, no shame in it. But again, stick to your process. Really think structurally. Make sure you're not being too quick to eliminate answer choices that feel irrelevant. And hopefully good things will happen. I don't know, I see two things out of the live group, seeing a lot of disagreement and just some wheel spinning. I mean, you guys are kind of slow on it. Yeah, this is a tough question, admittedly. And part of it is that there's just a lot of moving parts. And I think even, as I sit here while you guys are working on it and I try to write down, because again, you don't want to sit here and watch me write all this out in real time. As I try to kind of write out the heart of it, right? I want to get you to the conclusion, again, as always, exactly in their words. What exactly is the conclusion? Well, this cannot be the motive. Well, what is this? So again, and by the way, the question is focused on the second sentence, right? There's your conclusion. This cannot be the motive. Well, what do we mean by this? That thing's a freaking mouthful. This is a mess, right? So all of this can't be the motive, meaning that the industrialists of dystopia promoted the dystopian intervention in the Arcadian Civil War merely to ensure that the industrialist facilities in Arcadia made substantial profits during the war. I think part of what makes this question hard is it's just a lot of words to process, and that sounds really silly. But as you try to kind of, poke the hole or find the flaw or find the weakness or whatever, it's a lot harder to do when you've got something that is this sprawling. So heart of the argument here, this was not the motive. So it is wrong to say that the dystopian industrialists promoted the war merely to ensure that their facilities in Arcadia made substantial profits during the war. Okay, what's the reasoning for that? Well, as everybody in dystopian foresaw, or as the dystopians is the phrase they use, as the dystopians foresaw, dystopia's federal expenses for the intervention were $8 billion, but profits that the dystopian industrialists made in their facilities in Arcadia, just $4 billion. Hey, look, the argument is basically, no. The dystopian industrialists were not promoting the war just so that they would make profits on their facilities in Arcadia during the war. That doesn't make any sense because the war cost more than they made during the war. Sounds good, except federal expenses here, and these are the profits directly to the dystopians. But they're basically saying, hey, look at the difference between those numbers. Can't be that they promoted it to make more money. Can't make sense. Okay, fair enough. And again, as always, I know I'm a broken record on this, but these little tiny turns of phrase, and I'm resisting the temptation to pick on somebody I know and adore who's watching right now, who I think might have missed the phrase during war, kind of missed the significance of it in the conclusion itself. Okay. Answer choice A. So we're looking for the thing that's going to kind of be the but that says, wait a minute, there's a flaw in this logic here. So it's a weakener, but not in quite as direct or as clean of a way as you'll see in an actual weakened question. It's going to feel more like a but sort of phrase. Okay. During the Arcadian War, many dystopian industrialists with facilities in Arcadia experienced a significant rise in productivity in their facilities located in dystopia. Really hard. So they might have had a rise in productivity. That's great. But why would that expose a flaw in this argument? If anything, I mean, that sounds like a reason why I don't know, is the rise in productivity related to the war itself? Is it not related to the war itself? Really unclear how that even connects. And either way, it really doesn't help us show one way or another whether they promoted it so that they could make more profits. So I think A is out pretty easily for that reason. B, the largest proportion of federal expenses is borne by those who receive no significant industrial profits. Well, yeah, when you think about what's happening in that second sentence, so the question points specifically to the second sentence and say, what's the flaw in the argument made in the second sentence? What's the argument? Their motive was not just profits in their facilities in Arcadia. Why? Federal expenses were $8 billion, profits during the war were $4 billion, so it's not that. But isn't it a flaw if the industrialists aren't actually paying this $8 billion? If they have very little to do with this $8 billion in expenditures, they come out ahead, right? So that's really going to challenge the idea that it's not the motive, because that $8 billion might not mean anything to the industrialists because they didn't pay it. And that's what B is saying. That sounds pretty good because it's really challenging the relevance of this $8 billion number. C, most dystopian industrialist facilities located in Arcadia are expected to maintain the level of profits they achieved during the war. That sounds really good, right? But the problem is the entire argument is about the profits made during the war, number one. That's really your biggest thing, right? So the whole argument is the industrialists promoted the war just to ensure that their facilities made substantial profits during the war. Well, maybe they can maintain those profits later, but it doesn't really matter, right? So even if you can maintain that level of profits afterwards, it depends on where you think that came from. Is it because of the war that they can maintain the profits afterwards? In that case, it actually kind of strengthens this, right? Strengthens the idea that, hey, we promoted the war. It strengthens the idea that they would want to promote the war, right? If you think the post-war profits are due to what they gained during the war. Hey, we start the war, we make these profits forever. Well, that's great. You can think of it that way. You could also think of it as, well, hey, they would have made those profits either way. It's really, really unclear what that means and whether it's relevant, right? Because how is it that so why are they maintaining those same profits that they achieved during the war? Is it because they would have made them anyway? Or is it because of the war? Really unclear. And I think that's a lot of what we can see for us. And again, it also doesn't really address this idea that, but it cost more anyway, right? So the argument here is that couldn't be the motive because the war cost $8 billion, but they only made $4 billion. So that's another reason why C doesn't really matter, because the argument in the second sentence is they weren't motivated to promote the war for profit because, hey, that $8 billion, they might have lost money. So a little tricky on C. I think that's a really hard one to eliminate, but you've got a couple of different ways of looking at it. One is really unclear whether you can attribute the future profits to the war or not, first. And second, it really doesn't attack the core argument or has nothing to do really with the core argument that that was not the motive because of those super high costs. D, dystopian industrialist facilities in Arcadia made substantial profits before the events that triggered the Civil War. Kind of similar to C in a way. Like, why do we really care like what their profits were before that? If anything, you could, I suppose, argue that it strengthens it, that it's not a flaw, but something that would actually kind of strengthen this a little bit because they were making this money anyway. The war really didn't do anything for it. So if anything, D pulls you in the opposite direction. E, many dystopians expressed concern over the suffering that Arcadians underwent during the Civil War. Sometimes I feel like they just have to kind of write one more answer choice. This isn't going to do anything in terms of exposing whether there's a flaw in this, exposing that this argument is flawed. So E is out. B is our winner. Tough one. Okay, I think it's pretty time to wrap up. We are almost to the hour mark. As always, guys, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We will be here. Yeah. Oh, Kanza. Yes, this is great. So great question. This is what a lot of people experience, and I think you put it incredibly well, Kanza. So this is a much better way of phrasing what I was saying at the beginning about part of what makes this hard. We've got this really long story, and I think that makes it a lot harder to sort of pinpoint what exactly am I strengthening, what am I weakening, what am I identifying the flaw in. I think it makes it harder when you've got a longer story. And if you have a vivid imagination, one of the things you'll sometimes hear people say about reading comprehension is, oh, to help engage in this story, you want to really picture it and make it active for yourself. I have mixed feelings about that sort of advice on reading comprehension. It's not necessarily wrong. Critical reasoning, boy, you've got to narrow your mind. And I think when you're picturing, oh, it's the Hunger Games, I'm picturing some crazy thing, I'm picturing the war, it makes it so much easier to miss some little detail. And I feel cynical in a way saying when you're doing critical reasoning, narrow your mind. Don't let reality get in the way of your critical reasoning. But sometimes it's what has to happen. Sometimes when I see people who have backgrounds in literature, so people who studied literature, studied English in undergrad, and that was their main thing, amazing writers, amazing at comprehending complex text, they sometimes really struggle in critical reasoning because they're thinking too broadly. Don't imagine anything other than exactly what you're given. Be as literal as you can. And it's frustrating. And we can argue about whether this is good for real life skills, but it's what the test demands. So try not to picture stuff. Try to just stick very strictly to their language. And yeah, it's hard. And I think this particular question really induces kind of something visual. And it's really easy to miss those little phrases regardless. But especially if you're picturing the scenario, I think it's really hard to kind of catch every little detail. Great question. Oh, you must have hacked my emails. This will be episode number 6 next week, next Wednesday. We'll always be here on Wednesdays. Plan construct type questions, not sexy, but we'll try to make them fun as best we can next week. We should have about 3 more episodes left in this series, and then some other stuff coming your way. So please join us every Wednesday. And you are getting better, Julie. I've seen you week after week, and it really makes me happy. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you to all the regulars that are here every week. Love it, love it. Makes me happy. Bring your friends, please. Have fun studying, everybody, and we will see you next Wednesday, same time.